All right, welcome to another edition of the Edlow podcast. Subscribe 3 times every time. This is another one that I've been waiting to do. I've had a lot of different guests on, but my favorite is just some of the guys I know from the indie scene, the indie wrestling scene, and I have Lo Devereaux here. Lo, we're doing it. We're finally here.
Finally.
Sacramento's favorite son.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, you know
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, man. The thing that I've loved, I've promoted wrestling, I've booked wrestling, I've been a wrestler, I've been all around the business, and it was really interesting the first time I saw you because I think you would agree that the traditional '80s '90s view of what a wrestler should look like, you're a lot smaller, but
Yeah.
you have so much charisma, and you're so fun to watch. You just ooze it, and you're definitely one of the more exciting up and comers. How long you been working now?
My first match was September 24th of 2022. So
Oh wow,
it's a little over a year, like maybe a year and a half or so now that I've been wrestling.
man, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, to have that much charisma so quickly is quite a feat. Have you always been kind of animated and fun like that, or
I'm pretty reserved, honestly. Like
yeah?
let me get these guys off while I talk about me being reserved. I'm pretty reserved, like in my normal life. Like if I'm comfortable with you, I'm like anybody. Like if they're comfortable with somebody, they're way more animated. They're like a little bit more jovial. But yeah, for the most part, I'm just kind of quiet to myself. But wrestling's all I've ever thought about doing. So uh, I think it was after watching The Office, a lot of them looking to the camera and like Jim looking off to the camera. I would do that like as a teenager. I would kind of just look off somewhere. So I think that kind of helped start me like acting as if I'm in front of a camera, acting as if I'm doing something for somebody to get
Right.
a laugh. So I know that's one thing that I guess kind of got me comfortable with being able to do that. But yeah, I'm pretty shy to myself. I was that way when I first started training. Like me now at training, and me when I first started. Like two different guys. It took a lot to kind of get a lot of just me getting comfortable and okay. Like I don't mind being a fool in front of a bunch of fans. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm to myself.
Where's your home training company?
Well, I'm in between two. Right now, I'm
Mhm.
training with Big Ugly at the Ugly Dojo, like one of the first guys that started training there, part of his first class there. So that's really fun. And next level, I've been there since May of 2022.
Wow.
That's when I first started training again. So,
Mhm.
but those two schools right now are the schools that I'm representing and training at.
Wow. So you said you started training again. Did you have a stint before where you were training?
Yeah, the first time I started training, I'm 30 now. I first started
Mhm.
training when I was 18.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, I trained with TWF.
Okay.
It's like first day of 2012. Uh, went up there and Steven Smith, Jack Moves, and Christian Black were my like first initial trainers that I've ever had in wrestling. So they showed
Mhm.
me maybe I was there for maybe a month or so. I couldn't pay for it anymore, but yeah, I went there and then I tried again with SPW in 2015,
Mhm.
and JR Kratos and Jeff Cobb were leading it at the time.
Mhm.
So I was training with Fitzpatrick and Desi Dorada and Super Beast, and that again lasted for about a month and a half, and then something happened in my life to where I had to kind of take care of that and step back from wrestling, and uh, then tried again with SPW in 2021, and I just couldn't make the commute with my own personal life. I just couldn't make it back and forth. But going there again when I was a little bit older and had more life experience that really re-triggered like, okay, I got to get back into this somehow. And then I saw El Flaco Loco. He had posted something on Instagram saying, "Hey, train here. It's in Sacramento," and that was next level. And from then on, from May, I'm pretty cool with dates on this. May 2nd of 2022. That was my first day training back, and I stuck with it since. But
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. So
been a journey.
were you training with Tony Vargas, or was there somebody before him that you were training with?
With next level, it was Tony and El Flaco.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Nice. So where did that, if you're typically kind of tend to be more reserved, where did the, this kind of extrovert that is Lo Devereaux come out?
I'm pretty I know I'm pretty goofy like in my own like just personal time. Like I have a pretty weird sense of humor, but I think there was a few trainings leading up to I I want to say, I guess in hindsight it was leading up to me debuting, but for me it was just days of training. Like I didn't know when I was going to debut. But each time I would come in as I would give myself a name and then I would try to match that name with a character. So one day I was Micah and I came in and, "Hey there, partner, my name's Micah." And then I added on Waters. So my name was Micah Waters. And, "Hey there, partner, my name's Micah Waters, and I'm gonna rope you up." And so there was that. And then the one that stuck that everyone kind of like, I'm probably gonna regret saying this, but the one that stuck with everybody was a character that I came up with named Booty Willis. And Booty Willis would shake his butt and he'd get on the second rope and shake his butt. He'd try his best to twerk and do a lot of like Jimmy Jam, just strutting around the ring, and "Hey there, baby, look at Booty." And, I would say, booty, booties for the women, booties for the children. Everybody loves booty. So that one kind of really helped me just get comfortable with being kind of dumb and just being out there with, I don't know what I was going for when I was being Booty Willis, but I was like, that was the most kind of freeing in a sense, because I was like, this would normally be really uncomfortable for me, but I just committed to it. So yeah, kind of testing out things really helped me be more comfortable. And then leading up to my debut, I didn't know what I was gonna be called. Everyone was kind of like, maybe it's gonna be Booty Willis, and I was like, oh man, I can't imagine like kind of progressing through my career and then maybe getting to like AEW for like a AEW Dark or AEW whatever, or a tryout, and I win or something, and they're like, "Here's your winner, Booty Willis." So I couldn't imagine that. So I tried to come up with something else, and eventually came up with the name I have now. But
yeah. Well, how did you come up with that?
Well, my name's Logan, and my little brother, his middle name's Devereaux, and like that's a really cool name. Like his name's super fancy. So I was okay. I think I'm gonna take this Devereaux part. It rhymes. To me, it sounds like the name that someone can hold the belt with. Making his way to the ring. Here's your winner, Lo Devereaux. Like that sounds kind of grand in its own way to me. So I didn't want to go with anything that like it's kind of like like Logan Rage or like Logan Tough or like like names like that. Like
right.
I appreciate them, but I don't think that would be for me so much. But if I was named Logan Tough, I'd be the best Logan Tough there was. But, yeah,
well, I think you said something really interesting there, and that was you committed to it, and that's what I think is that you, whatever you were going to do, you were going to do it 100%, and it carries, right? Like when you come to the ring, you own what you're doing. There's no sense that you are uncomfortable doing what you're doing.
Damnedest.
Yeah, you do a great job with that. So now you said all you've ever wanted to do was wrestling. So tell me about growing up. Where did you grow up, and tell me about your family makeup?
So like I have like a weird story. I was born in Thailand. My mom's Thai. My dad's black. He was in the military. So eventually, I moved from. I was born in. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's Nakorn Si Thammarat, Thailand. I was born there. Spent a little bit of time in Bangkok, and then I moved to Sacramento. I moved more specifically to Rancho Cordova. That was where I was raised. I spent like up to age 13 there. And my whole time, I was just, everyone around me was into wrestling. My dad was into wrestling. My grandpa would watch wrestling with me. My grandma was into it sometimes, more like in the 60s. Like she liked Pepper Gomez and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like she said her and my grandpa would go to like Cow Palace.
Mm.
And so like they're like she was into it at a point, but after that, like she wasn't too into it unless I'd watch it and like The Rock came on or Booker T came on. Then she'd really be down. But um for the most part, like my dad was always overseas working. So I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, going between my grandparents, my mom's. So it was really just me watching wrestling like heavily. Um, my friends around me were into wrestling. Like this is what early like late 90s, early 2000s. So my friends were super into wrestling. I remember on the playground, everyone was talking wrestling. Some of the kids were actually like related to wrestlers, even though that's a wild thing where everyone's like, "Oh, my uncle, is a wrestler for WWF." One kid told me she was her uncle was Al Snow because her last name
Mm.
was Snow, and I believed it up until I found out Al Snow's real name. But some of these kids, they were related to Rikishi, and I would later find that out. Like um, Journey Fatu. I went to high
Yeah.
school with him, and I remember seeing him at the show, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm about to go see my cousins." And me and my friend are like, "Oh, get us in. We want to see the Usos." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I'll see what I can do." But yeah, like he was actually the only person that actually did have a family member that was in wrestling that would say
Wow.
that growing up. But yeah, yeah, everyone around me, all my friends were into wrestling, so they really kept me into it. And then I was kind of the last one that, stuck it out.
Yeah, that's the way it was for me. When I grew up in the '80s. I'm a little bit older than you, so Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, the Ultimate Warrior, and so. But then there was like a little area of time where wrestling kind of had a dead period during that Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels
Yeah,
kind of era where wrestling wasn't real hot, and guys. All my friends kind of grew out of it except for me. You kind of had to be a closet fan. Like you couldn't really
yeah,
be talking about it, right? Unless there was another wrestling fan, then you could talk about it. But you
yeah,
couldn't talk about it with your friends; they'd make fun of you. But then your era when the NWO and Degeneration X and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin came out, then it got super hot, and I don't think it ever really left. Like now, everybody watches wrestling, and it's
yeah.
part of
It's
pop
kind of
culture.
yeah.
Yeah. So now, as you're growing up, you said you've always kind of wanted to do wrestling. What was it about wrestling that made you want to do
Um, a lot of it, like I think it would start out with the pageantry. Like I
it? Hmm.
really love like my favorite things about wrestling is honestly like seeing like the people's gear. Like especially growing up, I would love who's wearing what for WrestleMania. Like what's their
Yeah.
WrestleMania gear? Um, when they debut just a new gear like on a random week, like Rey Mysterio always had new gear. Jeff Hardy would always have like new face paint combos and like all that. So I really like seeing people's gear and like the entrances and all that stuff. I would read a lot of the WWE magazines and
Hmm.
I love just learning about the wrestlers. So growing up, I spent a lot of time on Wikipedia, just kind of clicking from link to link, like wrestler to wrestler, and just reading up about them and learning their backstory, learning where they're from. Um, Listening to a lot of interviews. So honestly, a lot of my favorite things about wrestling is just learning the
Hmm.
person and seeing how that blooms into the people we see on TV.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, Let me ask you. So you mentioned your dad. A lot of the times was over. I'll tell you. For me, my dad being who he was and kind of being in and out every once in a while I was a kid. I was a big Hulkamaniac, and as I look back, I kind of look at him and I go, maybe I was kind of looking at him as a pseudo father figure with the train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins type of thing. And it sounds like your dad was in and out just by virtue of his job with the military.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you feel like there was anybody there that you kind of looked up to in kind of like a father figure role that maybe it filled in?
That's a really good question. Um, I don't know if I've ever thought about that. I know that when I think about wrestling in a way like that, I think of wrestling kind of helped raise me in a sense of,
Mm-hmm.
but in a way where, there's no conflict. Like wrestling couldn't yell at me or wrestling couldn't get mad at me. So wrestling was always like that. You go to it when something's going wrong, or you go to it because you just want to watch it.
Sure.
But a lot of times I'd spend watching wrestling, playing the video games, making like a billion match card with my wrestling figures.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say wrestling would essentially kind of be the people I look up to. Like all my favorite wrestlers growing up were, Jeff Hardy and John Cena and Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero and Hulk Hogan at a point. Like I thought, like I would play as Hulk Hogan in WCW NWO Revenge. Like that was my dog.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that was my favorite, man, on the
yeah,
64, dude. I
yeah.
couldn't. My friends and I, there were legit angry feelings over that game from my
Oh,
friends. Like they
yeah.
would get so mad, like guys wouldn't give for guys rides home, or like they just get all pissed
Okay.
off. It was great, man. That game, and then WCW 2000 and No Mercy when those came
Yep.
out, like same thing. We'd all get together and do tag team matches. People be turning on each other and just like all sorts of
Yep.
crazy stuff.
My who's your guy? Like my game was No Mercy. That was the one I played the most. Like me and my
Uh-huh.
friends, we'd play No Mercy. Who's your
Yeah.
guy? Did you have a guy you'd normally always do?
Yeah. Yeah, so WCW NWO Revenge was probably the one I played the most, and I loved Kevin Nash. I just loved
That's
powerbombing
fair.
everybody.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And I think in Revenge was when Goldberg first debuted in one,
Yeah.
and Goldberg. So it was always fun to spear everybody on with Goldberg. But Kevin Nash was kind of my guy. I loved Kevin Nash. I know a lot of people give him crap because he didn't draw too well as the champion in WWE,
Yeah.
and he kind of got some heat about the way he booked himself to beat the streak. But like I just loved being someone who was tall. I just loved the big guys who were kind of charming and just
Yeah.
were like, you know what I mean? Like Kevin Nash was just a guy where you look at him in Scott Hall and you'd be like, I wouldn't mind hanging out with those
Yeah,
guys.
they look cool.
You know what I mean?
They look
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Especially because I liked them when they were Diesel and Razor Ramon, but man, when they became the Outsiders, that was the coolest thing. I think one of the biggest things even though I was already training, so this was kind of a mark out moment. I would never been more angry, I think, than when Scott Hall turned on Kevin Nash during the whole Wolfpack thing. I just was like, damn it. You know what I mean? Like, I just love those guys together. And so, yeah, man, that was my thing. But what about, so your guy was who? Who was your guy?
My guy. So like when I play with my friends, everyone already picked their guys. So by the time I came in, I kind of got the scraps. Like someone's already The Rock, and someone's already Stone Cold, someone's Kane, someone was Undertaker, someone's HBK. So I just kind of looked through the guys that kind of looked cool to me, and when I was a kid, it was the Flames. So S.A. Rios had flame pants. So S.A. Rios was my guy growing up. So
Yeah.
he like for me, you're talking about Kevin Nash didn't draw that I know of. S.A. Rios never drew time in WWF, but he was
Right.
my guy. I loved him so much. The Rios driver was super sick.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember that was one of my favorite my first favorite wrestlers when I was a kid was S.A. Rios. So he was
That's awesome.
he was definitely my guy.
Man. So at what age did you, because I'll tell you, for me, it's actually kind of silly, looking back, but when I was a little kid, my parents would be like, maybe you could be a wrestler, because I was always big. And I was like, no way. I would never want to get beat up like that. Like, no way. And then I found out wrestling was fake. And then I was like, oh, I could do that then. You know what I mean? Like, I could do it. And then when Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant, that was like the moment for me where I was like, I want to do that. I want to be able to make people cheer like that. I mean, I was just recently telling my son, because we're going to WrestleMania. For Christmas I got my boys a trip. We're going to Philadelphia to see WrestleMania 40, and so we were talking about wrestling, and I was telling him, he was telling me about all these guys who do all these cool flips and stuff like that, and I was kind of teaching him, kind of what we learned, right? It's all about the psychology. The move just tells the story. And I was telling him, I go, listen, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant filled a stadium for 93,000 people and just sold a body slam and popped the place like I've never heard before in my life. Mm-hmm. And it was just a body slam, and if you do it right, that's all you need. And I just love the fact that, like, sometimes when I watch wrestling, I watch the matches where, like, one of my favorite matches of the last year was when Roman Reigns wrestled Sami Zayn in Montreal at Elimination Chamber or whatever. And the reason why I love that match is because the crowd was so hot for it and they didn't do anything.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They just sold a Superman punch and that running boot. And that was really it. It was just kind of telling that story. And, like, it was just amazing, And so what was it like? What were some of the storylines that you remember as a kid that, like, really kind of got you going into?
Like, when I really kind of remember actually actively paying attention to wrestling, like, I grew up watching, like, my first time watching wrestling was like 1998. But I would say when I actually, like, started understanding what's truly going on, besides seeing my favorite guys or just seeing matches, the most memorable ones was, like, Eddie and Ray, like that whole 2005 storyline. A lot of 2005 stuff sticks out very well for me. But, like, right now I'm kind of watching one where it's what was it? It was Chris Jericho, Christian, Lita, and Trish leading up to WrestleMania 20. And I was there for December 1st, 2003 episode. I was there for that. I was like 9 years old, and I was there for that. But I remember that storyline leading up to WrestleMania because it all culminated with Trish turning.
Yeah.
So like, little things like that. Muhammad Hassan is one that really stands out big for me.
Yeah. Were you in the? I remember the Super Show where.
Yes, I was there. Yeah,
I was there too.
Yeah, July 4th, 2005. I will never forget that one.
Yeah.
I was there.
That was such a bummer. That was also I think the same show where Shawn turned on Hogan.
Yep, right? That was what I was gonna say next. That one. Those two, I was, I wish they did more Super Shows because I really loved that one as a kid. That was awesome.
Yeah. But I remember seeing that thing where he choked out Taker. And such a bummer. I actually thought Muhammad Hassan had so much heat.
Yeah.
He was, because I went to WrestleMania 21 and I saw the heat he got on Eugene before Hogan came in and tossed him out. And I mean, he had so much heat going into that, and he looked so great. Like, he was just kind of a modern day Iron Sheik.
Yeah.
But looked like $1 million. It's really kind of a bummer what happened to him.
I think it was the perfect player, but the wrong time.
Yeah. No kidding.
He was so. I guess time will not necessarily overlook him, but what they were gearing with him, he was gearing up to be the next top heel, and he certainly was putting it in. I mean, but at the same time, America was a different place 20 years ago. So just totally different. Totally, it was just the perfect storm for his character until it ended the way it did. But He really got unjustified hate. America needs to check themselves and watch those videos back. He definitely was not the heel in those situations, but
It's true. It's so
yeah,
funny.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
So as you're
those
going through
were
high school, go ahead.
sorry,
Sorry.
sorry.
Go
I was
ahead.
just saying
Go ahead.
that was definitely one of my just most standout storylines that will always stick with me. Uh,
Yeah.
was that one? Just
Yeah. For sure.
potential wasted, potential wasted.
Yeah. So you mentioned high school. Where did you go to high school?
This is a long-winded story. So, um, when I was, what was I, like 14, 15, I wasn't doing the best in school. So my dad had been living overseas. I'd been living with my mom and my grandma, and they essentially had enough of me being disrespectful, me not doing what I was supposed to at school, um, just not really turning in my homework. I wasn't like just messing around in school, but I just didn't really turn in my homework and stuff on time or get good grades all the time. But they essentially decided it was time for me to live with my dad and get more time to be raised by my dad because at this time I'd just been raised by my grandma, my mom, and my grandpa. So they wanted me to have more time with my dad. So he at the time lived in Mauritania, which is in on the western coast of Africa. So
Mm.
I lived there, and so I went to school at an international school and an American international school for my freshman year, and then I like begged my dad, like, please, I'll do better. Please just send me back to Rancho and I'll do better. So he gave me the chance and I went to Cordova for my sophomore year. So this is 2009, 2010.
Mm.
And then I didn't really do that well when it came to the end of the year.
Okay,
Mainly
so
my,
can I stop you right there and ask
yeah,
you
go
what
for it.
what what was the issue? Like what was it that you were going through that kind of you weren't doing that stuff?
So a lot of it was just being disrespectful. I was
Mm.
disrespectful. Honestly, I was stealing money
Mm.
from my grandmother, which is something that I look back and it taught me the biggest lesson. Um, but yeah, I was doing that thinking I was being slick, and eventually it caught up with me. I got sent away, and when I came back to Rancho, my dad he essentially was like, "Hey, you're not doing any better than you were last time." I wasn't doing good math, and I was still just being lazy, not listening, being disrespectful, whether it was my mom or my grandparents, just not doing right. Just wasn't listening to anybody. So my dad's like, "Okay, well, you'll listen this time because you're going to be sent away again." So
Mm.
this time I got sent to a boarding school, and
Mm.
this one actually the lesson got through.
Mm.
I went to a boarding school in Cornville, Arizona, which is
Mm.
maybe 17 miles away from Sedona, like 20 miles. Um, but I went there from the August of 2010 to July of 2011,
Mm.
and I kind of was living in a dorm room with a bunch of other teenage boys. But the difference was some of these boys were there for drugs. Some of these boys were there for stealing. Some of these boys were there, same with the girls. But these kids were there for various reasons. And I was like, oh, I'm here because I just wasn't really listening and wasn't doing my math homework. So
Right.
kind of started straightening out a little bit, and being kind of grateful because from when I lived in Africa, I'd seen a lot of stuff that I'd never seen here in America before, and I've never seen it here since. And it
Mm.
taught me to be very grateful for the things I do have. And some of the kids, what we'd have for lunch in Arizona, they're like, I don't want that. That's da da da. And it made me think back on when I lived in Africa. I had people living in huts behind, like, we had a really big house, and I had people living in huts behind us. And like that taught me to be very grateful for the things I had. So when some of my, dorm mates, I guess, um, they're complaining about the food that was still pretty good. Maybe it just didn't look good to them, but it was still pretty good. When they complain about it, it definitely made me think back on those times. And nope, okay, it's food. I'll eat it, Um, but yeah, that one taught me a lot. So by the time I came back, I was 17. I got to graduate like slightly early. Um, that one taught me everything. It taught me not to steal from people. Be
Yeah.
Especially once I had my own job and I was like, oh, I just made $100 and I have to make this last. That's when I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I can imagine. Um, so I definitely learned a lot of lessons through being a teenager.
A
So yeah,
question.
high school was a wild place for me. High school was a
Sound
wild time.
It's funny because I think back to my high school days, and I had a lot of stuff going on at home that I was kind of lashing out. I was getting in fights. I graduated. I was fine. I didn't, no one was ever considering sending me to a boarding school, but I do know that I acted out and did some things, and I know it was because of things going on around me.
Yeah.
Do you think that type of acting out, was there anything going on looking back, just kind of doing self-assessment that kind of made you do that? What was going on?
Oh yeah. Like my grandfather had passed away. When I had lived in Africa, we're on our way back. Me and my dad had a big fight. It was the only time me and my dad had a physical fight, and I was running through the whole thing. Like I remember telling him, "I fucking hate you. Like who are you? Like you're not my dad. Like I don't love you." Da da da. Um, my stepmom like came in and tried to calm me down, and I just remember I wasn't having it because I was just so hurt by how one thing escalated. It was something that was very small and it escalated, but I had found out that he just found out his dad was about to pass away. My grandfather was passing away. So once I found that out, we killed their beef right there, and we flew back to Rancho to go try to see my grandfather. And on the way there, um, we were in Chicago. Last stop about to fly to Sacramento, and we found out my grandfather passed away. And
Mm.
that one really shook me up as a kid because it just felt like we were so close, but so far at the
Mhm.
same time.
Yeah.
And being at his funeral, and I just remember seeing like a lot of things I'd never seen before. Like I saw my dad. He cried. I'd never seen my dad cry. Like my dad's super military. My dad's like, the toughest guy I know. My dad's the smartest guy I know. My dad's like super cool to me. He wasn't when I was a kid, but now my dad's super fucking cool. Um, yeah, like I'd never seen him like really open up like that, and just a lot of my emotions just were kind of wild at that time. And I remember I knew I was doing the wrong thing and I was stealing money. I remember I
Mhm.
was doing the wrong thing, but I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know how to really react. So I just kind of, all right, well, I know money will, buy the things that make me happy.
Mm.
And so I was just kind of all amok. Not to put it all on that, not to say that that's why I was acting out, but I know at the time I felt a certain sort of guilt for doing the wrong thing. But I also felt no other way to kind of make myself feel better besides buy whatever dumb thing I wanted when I was 14
Mm.
or 15.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. So
it
so
was
so how have
it
you?
was a weird time.
I bet. Well, so tell me, as you've grown up, that's something that's really interesting. I call it. A lot of people call it retail therapy. Where you're like,
Yeah, it
where
definitely was. It definitely
yeah.
was.
And so what have you done? I mean, it sounds like wrestling is one thing, but what are some things that you do uh, when you're feeling down or low to keep yourself fulfilled?
To kind of do a callback to one of your prior episodes, I play video games, man. I like
Mhm.
playing some video games when I get the chance, or just excuse me, just spending quality time with like my girlfriend, or we like to go hang out with my mom or hang out with her mom, um, get-togethers with her family and stuff like that. Um, just kind of chill at home, watch a lot of like King of the Hill or like whatever else is on. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like to kind of I guess decompress really. Most
Sure.
things like most times like things are running a million miles an hour in my head like all the time. So just trying to slow things down for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Just normally just trying to relax in any way.
What is it in your mind that you're racing through? What are the things that kind of rush through your head all the time?
That's a good question. Um normally I'm just like kind of kind of anxious, I guess. Um
Mm.
I'm normally just kind of wondering what's next and how I'm going to tackle it.
Mm.
Kind of thinking about the things I got to do in a day. I have a like I annoy my girlfriend to death. I have a lot of alarms. So, just
Um,
because like I like to make sure okay, like so I either don't run past time if I'm not paying attention. Like if I don't have my phone near me, at least I have my alarm to let me know, okay, it's 7 o'clock, time to move on to whatever you're actually supposed to do.
mhm.
Like if I'm just kind of relaxing or whatever, and I'm just not paying attention. So just normally kind of the things I have to do next, or things that I should probably be doing if I'm like kind of relaxing and taking a minute. Things I could be doing, things like that. So I'm normally just kind of my mind's always rushing, or my mind might be somewhere else for a second. So
Mm.
I'm just,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm normally just, I don't
All
know if
over the place.
scatterbrain. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if
Yeah.
scatterbrain's the right word, but normally my
Yeah.
mind's like,
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting because I do too. It's funny. I find myself being so filled with so many things that I'm the same way. Like I joke with my secretary or anybody who wants to get me to go do something. I'm always like, if it doesn't show up on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
yeah, that's how
You
I
got to
feel.
put it on the calendar. And so how do you keep like you have these competing interests, you kind of scatterbrained. How do you keep yourself kind of aligned? Just the alarms?
Uh, that and being able to have kind of my mental time to myself. Like I normally have
Mm.
a if I'm not like if I'm watching my clock, then I don't got alarms. Like like my work days. Uh, I work at a school, so from this time to this time, I'm there. But when it's more when I get home, like say I got to get to wrestling training, I normally have like an alarm set up once every half hour, just in case I'm doing something in between. So I just
Mm.
don't leave out the door too late or like stuff
Mm.
like that.
Mm.
Because I feel like I'm a like I feel like I'm a late person that's trying to correct their lateness all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
So
the same way.
yeah.
I learned that from my mom. So yeah, I'm the same
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
I learned it from my dad. My dad will be like, "All right, let's go. Are you ready?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready." And he'll still like this is more childhood memory of like he's like typing away doing something on the computer because my dad's like a computer whiz is always like fixing computers or whatever. Like he was my school's IT manager when I was a kid once, and he's like, so like it's always like, all right, I'm ready. Are you ready? And he's just doing whatever, and it's 5 minutes later. It's like, Dad, like I've been ready, and you said we are gonna leave at this time. So I think I might get it from my dad because
Yeah.
my mom's pretty punctual about things. Is one thing I'm learning is my mom when we go out places, she'll say, okay, I'll meet you there at 5. I'll get there. I might be there like 5:01. She's already waiting, arms crossed. Where are you? So
Nice. So going back to wrestling, let's kind of talk about who are kind of your favorite guys to work with.
um honestly, I wish I've had more chances to work with like just like taller guys. Honestly, like yourself, Alex
Uh-huh.
Ace. I feel there's always a fun David Goliath dynamic that should always
Hmm.
be told, will always be told in wrestling. And that's just naturally always fun. I feel that's you know something to kind of parallel from just life problems of you feeling like you're going against something bigger than you.
Hmm.
So I've always liked those kind of matches. but right now, my favorite people to work with are people that have been working longer than me, help me get a little
No.
bit better.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know if I have favorite guys that I've really worked with yet. Because I kind of enjoy every venture. I have people
Yeah.
that I'm very comfortable with working, but I want to say that for the most part, I enjoy every venture, having a match with anybody I have match with. But there are certain dynamics that I do prefer or would like to have more of, just because I want to say the me and you haven't had a match, but I've
No.
had one moment with Alex Ace, and he chopped me in the chest so hard, so hard, and then there was a second one, and I'm just kind of trying to find my way around the ring, and by the end of the night, my chest had started blistering, and I never ever had that. So like, oh my goodness. But also like visually, I know what I like to see as a fan, so um those were always my favorite matches. Like my favorite matches, honestly, I enjoy kind of just randomly watching Viscera matches.
Mm.
I don't.
Mhm.
There's just something about watching whoever go against Viscera is always a fun story. Like it's always fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I always like a David Goliath story. But yeah,
Yeah.
those are really like, yeah. What were you saying?
Who who are the guys, like you mentioned you like working guys who are older than you? Are there a couple people that you could point to that you would say are like kind of the ones that have kind of helped you along the most? I mean, obviously your trainers, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
anybody else?
Um, El Chupacabra, he taught me a lot. Like him and DJ Fresh. First time I want to say it was one of my first triple threats, if not my first triple threat. They taught me a lot. Because that was one of the first times where in a match, I want to say maybe that was like my 20th match or something like that. And it was just I still that one showed me how much I had to learn. It showed me
Mm.
the levels,
Mm.
even in the scene, the levels. It just taught me the levels. So
Yeah.
it just taught me a lot. Both of them, and they're super cool just in general. But that match taught me a lot for myself. Um, uh, this guy's not older than me, but he taught me a lot because he's been in the ring a lot longer than me. Um, Titus, I had
Mm.
one match with Titus, and it was a 6-man tag, and it was just more of the finish. There was a couple of miscommunications earlier in the match, but once it got to that finish, just feeling you can feel the difference. I felt a difference. Just
Mm.
the way he did his moves. It felt different than anybody I'd been in the ring with, and I was like, oh, okay, I can understand uh, the different level of workers. It was the same thing that I learned with Chupi and DJ. It's like just understanding the levels and
Yeah.
just kind of being coached afterwards and being coached whenever he has the time to stop through the dojo whenever he's not, touring around the world. Um, just he says a lot without saying a lot,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could even see it with his mannerisms, just in ring mannerisms. So he taught me a lot from the time we were in there.
Yeah. I'll tell you. So I'll tell you an interesting story. The first time I saw Titus live, he worked Johnny Butavi at one of those brewery shows here in Sacramento, and it was a ring rental I'd done for Joe DeSol, and so Titus is working Johnny, and he did that beautiful drop kick, that he hits, and it's
Yep.
just a thing of beauty when he hits it. But he hit it, and then when he landed, the look on his face when he landed was like he was still in it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
a lot of guys, they're so focused on the moves, and I see myself do this too, especially if I have a guy who is really detailed. You know what I'm saying. I don't want to smarten everybody up, but super detailed.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Where you're like, how am I going to remember all this?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And so it's easy to just like focus on the move and then think, okay, where do we go next? He was in it. Like he never broke character. He landed on the ground and he just stared and just like did this thing where it was like, you could just tell it was a different level the way he was working. And I go, okay, another guy I like who I love to watch work is Jaya.
Yep.
Jaya is like another guy who like you look at him and he doesn't look like your traditional wrestler.
Very unassuming.
Yeah, but his mannerisms. You were at the last Ugly Dojo show.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So did you? I don't know if you had an opportunity. I think we were both peeking through watching Jaya work Derevka.
Yeah.
Man, just his mannerisms and the way he worked that match was just so good. He's so there, and no wonder he's going to Japan. Like that's pretty awesome. And so who would you consider?
That's his dream. That's his dream. Well, me and him have talked about it. Like he's one of the first guys that I had kind of met in wrestling, and one of the first guys that when I was training, I'd watch him on a show, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's good." Like out of all the guys I'd watch, I was like, "I really like him." There's something about him that I like. I don't know what it is. And I remember we were doing flyers for shows, and we were trying to help set up for shows. And one day we're commuting show to show, and I just asked him. I was like, how did you get into all this? And long story short, he told me he watched a lot of Japanese wrestling. So I was like, Jaya's going to. I was like, I don't care, no matter what. Jaya's going to Japan, like that.
He's gonna do great, man.
Yes,
he's gonna do well.
Yes.
It's you being around since 2012, you probably kind of know this. I finished actually promoting around that time. I was running SWF, and but man, I've been around the scene since 1998, and it used to be a wasteland here. Like you just nobody got looks out here. Nobody. There were so many good workers that never really got a shot just by nature. I mean, the name that comes to mind the most is Oliver John, who I know helps over at Ugly Dojo.
Yep.
If he would have been in Florida or down in Memphis or somewhere like that, he would have gotten picked up immediately, because he's just so good. But because he was here where a lot of people weren't getting looks, he really didn't get his due. And there were a lot of those guys. And so it's kind of cool now looking at, being around for the last 25 years to see so many guys finally kind of get their shot. Like NorCal wrestling or the territory, whatever you want to call it, is finally kind of getting its due with, guys like JR, ended up in the NWA and in New Japan, or like Jeff Cobb touring the world, Hobbs, being an AEW, Thatcher getting to NXT. I mean, these guys are all finally kind of breaking through, and it gives opportunities for younger guys like you to finally, kind of get those looks too. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So who are some of the guys that you kind of look at? I mean, if you've known of the business since 2012, you've probably been tracking NorCal wrestling since that time. Who are some of the guys that you kind of looked up to as you were watching wrestling, and who are your favorites?
When I first started, like, just kind of actively paying attention to the local scene, for me, it was like Jeff Cobb and Thornstill, because I'd watch them have like a couple bangers. So like as a fan, I was like, oh my God. And just to be able to train under Jeff Cobb for, like a month or so, or whatever time I had, he still taught me a lot. Like him and Jeff and JR Kratos and even Brian Tannen, they taught me a lot within the small time I was there. And we even had a time where we went to like a gymnastics center, and that's when I got to see just see him practice the shooting stars he does and the
Mhm.
moonsaults and like all that stuff. So that stuff, as a fan and someone who's trying to become a wrestler, that really helped my fandom of like, man, this guy's good, and this guy's a
Mhm.
guy that, maybe not size wise, but just what he does. I was like, I want to be like that
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
Um, Ugly, I've seen Ugly forever. Ugly and Flacco, like I've seen forever. Not to
Mhm.
really just group them together, but they're two people that mean a lot to me and mean a lot to my training. Um, but Ugly, I've seen I saw him at a Hood Slam show couple years ago. It was him versus Johnny Butabi, and they had the hardest hitting match I'd ever seen like in person. On top
Mhm.
of me, like just the environment being like a Hood Slam show, I like it was just a wild environment, and he was just someone that I always thought brought a different kind of credibility to all the other guys I like opposed to all the other guys I've seen because of his size, but the way he carried himself, his look and the way he
Mhm.
carried himself. Because I'm like, you have Kratos who's obviously bigger, but
Right.
the way that Ugly carries himself, I'm like, man, that's still a guy I wouldn't want to fuck with. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and same with Flacco. Like, I'd met Flacco as a fan, and I'd followed him since like the MySpace days. Like him and Cheapy, I followed. Like I remember them from MySpace. Them and Rick Luxury, I remember from MySpace.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of followed through and through. But like Flacco, I'd met just as a fan, and he gave me a bunch of old lucha mags and like just a bunch of wrestling mags in general. But he was someone that I just kind of kept up with just because I was like, I don't know who you are, but you're really cool. And then I found out at the time he was like the announcer or like the commissioner or something like that. But he wasn't in a wrestling role. And
Mhm.
I just remember this guy's cool. I like him no matter what. He's cool. So he's one of the guys that I would just kind of follow through. Um, but yeah, like I guess the notable names that I guess I followed their careers but didn't know that they were local guys was Johnny Mundo, Johnny Nitro,
Yeah. Right.
John Morrison. Like I didn't know he was from here until I don't know, maybe around 2013 or 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah. Yeah.
totally I thought he was from LA like they were saying. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally
He's a
didn't know.
good one. Yeah, it's interesting to watch. It's been kind of cool to be here, kind of from the beginning, because guys like Justin who run Next Level,
Yeah.
and Derevko who runs Action Coast. A lot of these guys, Schizo who started PCW and kind of found Mr. Primetime and Rick Luxury.
Yeah.
Um, all these guys started at Pro IM, where I started with Oliver John. Oliver John
Oh.
in '97 and '98, he had a guy named Paul DeMarco, who was one of those guys from
Yeah.
Big Time Wrestling.
I've heard of him.
They, yeah, they started that place, and so the first two guys I met in wrestling were Derevko and Justin. And we were all kind of training at the same time. They'd had a little more time than I had, and then Schizo was there, and there were a few other guys there that are notable, but they all branched out and kind of are mainstays in the Sacramento, Yuba City area. And then you have all the guys from All Pro Wrestling. And it was so interesting because back then all there was All Pro Wrestling, and that was it. There was like nothing
Mm-hmm.
here. And then I was involved with the beginning of SPW even before Ugly was there. Just a couple of shows before him. And so to see kind of the scene kind of blow up from that and see all you guys come in, I'm still involved and I'm still doing stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm over the hill and I'm doing it for fun. You know what I mean? Like I'm not necessarily looking to get. I'm not going to leave my partnership at my law firm to run away with the circus. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
you guys, but you guys are, and it's just so cool to see how kind of all these people built this area that now is a funnel for the big time, and you guys have the opportunity to do that. And so, what is your goal? Like, what if you could? You mentioned Jayo wants to just go to Japan. Where do you want to be?
Uh, when I started this initially, as far as I can go, um,
Mhm.
I I'd love to go to Japan. My dad lives in Japan right now, so I'm like that'd just
Mm,
be easy room and board. But
right.
um, yeah, I'm like I'd I'd love to go wherever has me, as long as as long as my body says I can do it.
Mm.
I don't know if you noticed, but my alarm just went off. My alarm letting me know it's 5 o'clock.
Nice.
I had to like quickly
Nice.
fix that. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, really, it's really as far as I can go. I also need to do a little bit more on my end to make some of that happen. But right now, I'm not so worried about getting signed by any place. I'm not so worried about uh, being the next viral sensation in wrestling. Um, I'm more worried about just getting my experience and kind of like I guess enjoying the journey of this. I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah.
Um, it's taught me a lot, and I've got to be like even within the year and a half I've been doing. I've got to be in locker rooms with all sorts of cool people with all different walks of life. Whether um, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Kayfabe, but whether
Mhm.
they've made it to the show or whether they've just been touring around. Um,
Right.
it's been really cool just to have those moments of, oh, I was in the locker room with so and so, and I remember watching them on TV. Like those moments and being able to just have fun moments with the people you've been training with, or the people you've gotten to know over show after show after show. Those
Mhm.
are those things that I've really enjoyed so far. So I really just kind of just wherever this journey takes me so far, uh, and will take me, I'm kind of down with that.
Yeah.
If it takes me to the wondrous places of WWE or AEW or New Japan or any of like the other cool places, then it does. But right now, I'm just more interested in the people I get to meet and the journey that comes with that.
Yeah. It was funny. That was one of the things when I started training again with Johnny Jeter and doing his thing at Manicore. He asked me when I started working with him, he goes, "So what would your goal be?" And he was kind of hyped me up. He's like, you're 6'7", you're 280, like, he's like, you could go pretty far, if you really put your mind to it and stuff. And I told him, I go, listen, I'm 42 years old. I got 4 kids. I'm not really looking to travel the world with the WWE. But if I ever got a WWE tryout, I want to go there and I want to show them that I can go with anybody, right? And
Hmm.
that's kind of the goal I have. And it sounds like you're very similar. Like you want to get your experience. You want to just be able to go out there. I think it's cool. One of the coolest things I've been proud of with my kind of this run that I'm on is that I've had a bunch of matches. It's funny you said you don't have a match that you've that you like is your favorite because you've enjoyed them all. It's the same thing. Like I love the fact that guys like I got in the ring with Michael Shawn or Prince Gabriel
Hmm.
or Drake Frost, right? And these are people who I've never been in the ring with ever. We
Yeah.
didn't walk in we didn't walk in the ring and practice anything. We didn't do any of that stuff. We barely talked. We kind of had a general idea what we were going to do. And it was just so cool to sit there and talk to these guys and say, okay, what do you do? What do I do? Okay, what's the story we're telling? And then be able to go out there and do it without ever touching before.
Yep.
It's a cool feeling to get the pop that you wanted, tell the story you wanted without without ever kind of practicing, if you will.
Yeah. And
And
learning what works and what doesn't work.
yeah, right, right. It's funny when you look at guys like John Cena and they call him the 5 moves of doom, and yet he's one of the favorite. He's one of the best. He's legitimately considered on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling
Yep.
with 5 moves.
He's my boat and goat. He's the best. I love him.
Yeah. Ollie once told me he heard this from Jake the Snake Roberts, and Jake confirmed it for me when I did his podcast and we were talking offline. He said when he started wrestling, he had 1,000 moves, and he's like 10 years in, I had 100 moves. Now I have 3. You know what I mean? And he gets over every time. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? He figured it out, and that's what's that's what's cool about what we do. Now,
That's what I'm trying to
I
learn
mean,
right now.
right. So now tell me, you mentioned something earlier. You said you got a weird sense of humor. So tell me, like, what is it that you find humorous that's so weird? Do you have a certain type of movie genre that you think is weird or
uh,
something like that?
I'm not like a big movie guy. When I do watch movies, I like gang movies or mobster movies. Like I just watched A Bronx Tale for the first time.
Oh yeah,
Um,
good one.
yeah, that one I'd never watched before, but like YouTube just kept pitching me it. It kept
Yeah.
giving me like YouTube shorts of like Robert De Niro and like
Hmm.
so I was like, okay, let me watch this, and it was really good. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and trying to get my girl to watch it, but she was like, the movie you just watched the other day, and I was like, yes,
Yeah.
let's watch it again, because I'd watched it with my
Yeah.
friend and I told her all about it. But
Yeah.
like my my humor, I can't really like say some of the words that I don't want to say. I don't want to say them on here. I'd say them to you in person. But like I I I would say kind of like Charlie Murphy would say is I like to say my humor is kind of like habitual line stepping.
Oh
Like it
yeah.
likes to push as far as it can go. Um, but my the things that gets me most is, like I said earlier, I like watching King of the Hill, because
Mm,
I can listen to it or I can watch it. When you watch it, you get to see all the jokes that are happening that are just visual gags. When
right.
you get to see that when you're watching, but when you're listening, it's just as funny to me.
Mm,
Um, that's my favorite like animated show of all time. I just think it's a good
yeah.
slice of life. It's really funny. You can watch it at any spot. I would say that's based a lot of my humor.
Mm, hmm. Hmm.
That's yeah, that's me
Yeah.
and Reese. That's me and Reese the Beast's favorite show. We joke a
Yeah.
lot about King of the Hill. Um,
That's
so
awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
You
but
mentioned uh, gangster movies. Have you ever seen Casino?
I haven't. But my friends were watching that like a couple months ago. I was kind of bummed out because I heard about it, but I've never got to see it.
And my dad, see, that's the thing. My dad, I'm Mormon, but we were not traditional Mormon. My dad took me
Yeah.
to that. And I was like 15, and we went and saw it in the theater. And it was it's a very good. You like a good gang movie? That's a good one, man. Like if you have a chance, watch it. It's like 3 hours long, but it is so good. Joe Pesci is so good in that movie.
Ooh, okay, yeah, then I want to watch
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's a good one. And of course, another, the old one. What do you call it? Well, The Godfather's good, but what's the one with
Yeah.
Ray Liotta and Robert De
Goodfellas.
Niro?
Because
Goodfellas. That's
I
the
still
one.
haven't gotten to see that one. I want to watch that one so
Oh,
bad. I've never gotten to see
that's the
that
one
one.
that's like the gangster movie, man.
Because that's that
And
that's the one where like, am I funny to you?
yeah,
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's the one
yeah,
I want to see.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then also, did you ever see Denzel's Washington in An American Gangster?
No.
See,
He has a lot
that's
of good ones.
another one.
I
Yeah, that was
recently saw
another one that was really
Training
good.
Day for the first time, so
Oh
I'm
yeah,
kind like I was saying earlier, I'm like kind of like bad on movies, and I've gotten
uh
worse
huh,
over the years. Unless it's
uh
something
huh.
like, oh man, I like it's Batman, it's Spider Man, it's Iron
Right.
Claw, it's like, unless it's
Yeah.
Oppenheimer or Barbie, like
Yeah.
unless it's like.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not like the best movie watcher, but I'm trying to get better by like, okay, I'm seeing something about the movie that's intriguing. Let me watch it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever seen Blood In, Blood Out?
No. Is
That's
that
my
good?
favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite movie of all time, and it's like my favorite gang movie of all
Oh
time.
yeah.
It's
My
it's
my favorite
it's good.
my favorite my favorite one of those. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a gang movie, but it probably is. It's Pulp Fiction. Um,
See, that's where I'm late. I know.
yeah. What was that? Sorry, you missed you. Your alarm was going off. What'd you say?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I've seen that one, but I've heard, I know that one. I've just never been like, I've never put the time aside to watch that one. But I was like, I know that's one of the most classic, not only
Oh yeah.
Tarantino movies, but just classic movies in general.
Oh yeah. That's a good one, man. So now, what does your family think about the wrestling?
Shit, you better make me cry. My mom, she's put up with me loving wrestling my whole life. I want to say the only time she's talked about wrestling was, so my mom's from Thailand. She came to America in 1990, I want to say. So she knows the Ultimate Warrior. She knows Hulk Hogan. And that's probably because my dad was like, "Babe, you got to watch this match. It's Hulk Hogan, it's Ultimate Warrior." Like that's the only way I think my mom knows. Because I'm like, I don't know. When she brought that name up to me as a kid, I was like, "How do you know that name?" But she knows that. She knows The Rock. She knows John Cena. Like she was gushing about them the other day. Like those are what wrestlers are to her, are just sexy men. So she can give a shit about wrestling. But like my grandparents and my dad told me that my grandparents loved Sputnik Monroe, which like anyone watching that doesn't know about Sputnik Monroe, I wouldn't be here on the same show with Mr. Edlow talking about wrestling and other things without Sputnik Monroe. We wouldn't be able to be on shows. We wouldn't have known each other without Sputnik Monroe. So my dad told me that they love Sputnik Monroe amongst like Red Bastien and Pepper Gomez and all those guys. But my dad was really the main one. When he found out I stuck through with it and was having my debut, my dad has worked overseas my whole life. My dad was in the crowd for my first match. Hi, puppy.
Yeah.
My dad was in my dad was in the crowd for my first match. So I was just so excited because I was like, he's the person that made me love wrestling. Really, he took me to my first show. Like everything about wrestling. So my dad was super stoked. He like the next day we went to Brookfields and he was just so proud of me. Like he was talking to me about it. And my mom, there was a moment when we had a show at the Golden One. It was a PCW show. And my mom, she came and she saw me signing signing an autograph for someone. And she started tearing up. And she like came over to me and she said, "I'm so proud of you." And I'd never had my parents tell me I'm so proud of you, let alone in such a close time span, that I almost started just because especially my mom, she doesn't like wrestling because she's just seen me get hurt. She sees how small I am. She sees all the other guys, like some of them are super jacked or some of them are just noticeably bigger than me or like whatever the case. She's just like, okay, that's my 5-year-old son right there about to get beat up. So I can understand. So my mom was more hesitant until last year, and then she told me she was proud. So that moment from both of them kind of let me know, like, okay, maybe I'm not exactly what they wanted, but I'm exactly what they knew I would have done.
Yeah. So. Well, and let me ask you, going from being that kid that they, that kind of messing around, that they're a little frustrated with, sending off to boarding schools, to go from that and then have wrestling be the thing that turns you into someone they're proud of. What does that mean to you?
It means the world, honestly. Yeah. You got me all shy. I'm like, man, you're like, hit me with questions that just make me feel like a little kid, because that's how that emotion makes me feel, is just I'm just really proud to make them proud in my own way. I think that's what it is for me. Because I knew all the hell I gave my mom, all the hell I gave my dad. I've made them cry, and I mean, that's nothing to be proud of. So to be able to make them cry, like tears of joy, that I'm very proud of.
There's something to, and I'll just share with you. I share this type of kind of what this sounds like a back in my day type of thing. It's like it's sage advice, as if I have all the answers. But there's something to kind of, I have always been one who nobody can tell me what I am or am not going to do, period.
Mm-hmm.
And I will not be deterred. There is something about being able to live life on your terms and be successful and make the people proud of you, to almost kind of prove everybody wrong about you. Because listen, you and I have different experiences, but I can tell you that when I came out of high school, nobody thought much of Josh Edlow. Nobody thought that I was going to be much. Sure, everybody thought I was going to be a pro wrestler. That was kind of the thing, because that's what I was doing. I was a big in the backyard scene.
Yeah.
And then I got into the SPW stuff and did some pro stuff, and then went on a mission for my church. But in every area that I lived, I mean, from pro wrestling to being an attorney to going on a mission for my church to being a good dad, nobody really thought I was going to make it. And it's really great to, like you mentioned, your mom and dad are proud of you on your terms. And that's it. It's there's something to be said about looking somebody in the eye who says it's impossible and doing it, and say, and being able to live life on your terms. If there's any sort of advice I could give to anybody listening here about that, it's that there are lots of ways to make money. There's lots of ways to be successful. There's lots of ways to live this crazy existence that is life. But I think there's something to be said about being true to yourself and living on your terms and making people proud in your own way that really is fulfilling to the soul. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt. Like there was a moment before that where it's kind of a proud moment of my own, of just being able to have my parents in the same room with each
Yeah.
other. So to have not only have done that, but to have them be proud of me over wrestling. The one
Yeah.
thing that either they thought that I'd let go of or would never try, or whatever the case, the fact that I got to get them to see me and see what I had trained to do and what I wanted to do. Because sometimes I just feel like the little kid that was just sitting, kicking his feet, playing his wrestling toys and doing all that. Sometimes I still feel like that when I'm at training, when I'm still learning this stuff, is like, I still feel like that kid with that same like love of wrestling. Like I want to get better. I want to know all this stuff. I want to, I guess, live my dreams and make them come true. Those weird dreams that you wake up. Like I've had dreams where I woke up and it's just me at WrestleMania, or me, like, so it's like things like that where I'm like, is that me? Is that a dream, or is that something that I am supposed to? There we go. But is that me, or is that something that I need to, keep attaining, keep going towards? So.
Right. It's interesting. You never know where you're going to go. This is another thing that I think is important is, I talked to my son is a big guitar player and a singer, and he wants to make a go. He wants to make a go of that. But he's kind of like, oh, I don't know. I probably should figure out a backup. I probably should do all these other things. And he's like, because what if I fail? And, when I was 17, 18, I thought I was going to be, I had actually made plans to go and train with Off of the Wild Samoan in Pennsylvania. And then, but didn't do it because I decided to serve a mission for my church. And, I thought I was going to tour the world with the WWE doing pro wrestling. And, that was kind of my goal. And so when I look at this wrestling thing now, I've been in and around it for 25 years. I was backstage at a Royal Rumble in 2019. I got to see the backstage and see what it was like. But other than that,
cool.
Yeah. But other than that, I've never wrestled for the WWE. So I guess technically you could consider that a failure. But man, like I look back at like bringing New Japan to NorCal, to bringing Shinsuke Nakamura, being able to do all this charity work with Lucha Libre USA, with TNA, like do all these different things. That's a pretty cool failure. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't say that's a failure in my eyes. That sounds like you're successful. Maybe you didn't get to WWE, but you got to do all these cool things that you succeeded. You
Yeah.
didn't fail,
Well,
you didn't fail in getting Shinsuke here. You didn't fail in get like
sure.
I think that's just a cool part of just your life story.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think my point was that like, will my son ever become a Grammy nominated artist and tour the world and be Metallica? Like maybe not, but
Yeah.
but hey, you could have some really cool experiences along the way, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what I think is cool about wrestling, is that we have these cool experiences that very very few people get to experience by being a part of this crazy,
Yeah.
entertaining pseudo sport.
I
You
got
know?
to dress as New Jack and be in a match against Mustafa Saeed.
That's
I was like,
awesome.
what?
Yeah,
So I was like,
yeah,
yeah, I was like, as long as you make your dream, as long as you keep tracing your dreams or whatever the case, whatever you're chasing, they can come true as long as you kind of just keep putting your foot in it.
yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. So let me, as we wrap up on this, let me ask you. I ask everybody 3 questions, so I'm going to ask them to you. First one: what is your biggest success in life?
my biggest success,
Yeah.
um, I think it's gonna go back to my parents. So,
Mm.
my parents have been divorced since I was like a little kid, probably like I was 2 or something. Um, and when I got to get them together to celebrate my birthday, um, at a place I'd like worked at, my dad, he was coming from, overseas. My mom lives in town. But when I got to get them together and I got them to take a photo with me, I was like crying in the photo. That was probably my
Mm.
biggest success ever.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
your parents not get along normally? Is that?
Uh they can get along, but I just believe they had such a rough past that, like it's kind of hard to forget whatever happened to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's,
I feel that.
so I can understand. So for my parents to be able to just put that shit aside and be able to kind of just do it for me. Like that felt really good. I felt like the biggest baby on earth. Like I was crying.
Yeah.
But it was
That's
something I fought hard for and I didn't think I could do. And the fact that I did it, that taught me I could do anything. I was like, oh, I
yeah.
can do anything after this. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's awesome. That's awesome. So tell me now, what do you think is your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
um, my biggest failure was when I stole money from my grandma
Mm.
when I was a kid. It taught me a lot though. But I would say, like, as a human, that was probably the worst thing I've done, especially because as a family member and someone who took care
Yeah.
of me like my whole life. Um, whatever reasons I thought I was doing it for, still wasn't the right answer. So that would be my biggest failure. But I learned not to play with people's money.
Mm.
Um, I learned I learned that I wanted to make my grandma proud because all the things I do now, I always think like, would my grandma be proud of me or would my grandma be happy? Like if I ran home from whatever I was doing today and just told her like, yo, grandma, I did whatever, would she be proud of me? So I would say that's the stuff I took out of it. That I learned from it is just trying to be a better person, not just a better man out of it, but be a better person in general. Uh, from that mistake I made because I stole thousands. I stole
Mm.
thousands. Like I stole so
Mm.
much money, and it's something that I sit with. Of like, how could I do something so disrespectful? Um, but the thing is, it taught me who she was as a human being. Because my dad, he had pulled me aside and he said, "We're gonna talk about that money you stole from your grandma." And I thought I didn't know what I didn't know how he knew. but he found out, and obviously, like, my grandma just told him, like, "Hey, I'm missing a bunch of money,"
Yeah, yeah,
and there's only one other person in the house. But I just remember how I felt in that situation. Just made me feel so ashamed, and I she was so calm about it. She was like, I knew you were doing it the whole time," and she's like, "I just wanted to see you. I just wanted to catch you in the moment." And just how cool she was about that, I was like, man, like, if that were me, I would have busted, I would have like, just been on me about
yeah,
that. But she was like, no, I wanted to see you do it. And I could see why, because I'm like, when that did happen, the one time she did catch me, it hurt me so much. I never stole. I didn't want to steal no more,
yeah,
because she caught me face to face. And that, like, seeing her face and seeing the look of disappointment, because I never saw a face before. So I seen the look of disappointment in her face definitely learned me. It definitely taught me
yeah,
so much that I'm like forever grateful, and I'm like consistently trying to, I guess, be a better version of the Logan she raised and she helped
yeah.
raise and she knew. Uh, I'm just trying to max that up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, let me tell you, man. We often beat ourselves up and feel guilty about bad things we've done in the past, and I actually have had this conversation numerous times where I've got people who've done me wrong, and they go, "Oh, you make me feel." When I call them out on it, they say things like, "Oh, you make me feel like I'm such a bad person. You think I'm such a bad person." And I tell everybody the same thing when I hear this. I go, "You're not a bad person just because you make bad choices. It doesn't make you a bad person. You can cease making those choices today, and you are no longer that person." And so if you're beating yourself up low over stuff you did when you were 14, 15, 16 years old and wondering how you could possibly do that, well, you couldn't possibly do that because you are a different person than that person when you were 15, 16 years old,
yeah,
right?
no, I definitely am now.
Yeah.
I like I've been working in the school district for what? I'm 30 now. I've been working there since I was like 2021, and
Uh-huh.
that was the first thing that let me know, okay, I'm different now. Is
Hmm.
me working with kids, is it taught me
Yeah.
to be more selfless, and I
Hmm.
was like, if my grandma saw that, she'd be so proud of me. So I've had moments where I'm kind of like, all right, I'm not the person I was when I was, that age. Beyond,
Yeah.
me looking different, beyond me being different. But yeah, no, there are
Yeah.
definitely there's still those moments where I do feel it though, where um, I do feel, I guess, bad about what I did, but it's more of now I've turned it into, oh, well, I've learned a lesson from it of not to
Yeah.
be this way, not only with people that I love, but be this way with people in general.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, that's the beauty, as a Christian, that's the beauty of the theology of repentance and forgiveness is that I think that we often learn the hardest lessons and the most valuable lessons by making mistakes. And
yeah,
so it sounds like you found those. Last question:
yes.
uh, when you pass away, there's going to be a funeral and there'll be a eulogy. And what's the one thing you hope somebody says about you in your eulogy?
Hmm. I don't know. That's a really, really, really good question. I would like to think that I would like them to. I guess I have to build this myself, but I've been building it. I would just like them to talk about my kindness towards people. Um, because I mean, anybody can have a bad day, but I really do strive my best to really be fair with anybody I come across. Um, like, try to be understanding, try to be patient. Um, try not to, like, you're standing in line and someone cuts you. Like, I can choose to make a big deal out of it, or I can, either let them know nicely, like, hey, I've been standing here, or I can just let it go. Like, being able to think clearly enough to make those choices. I like to think that I'd like to hope that people would say that I was just really, really fair with them and an overall good person to them.
Yeah.
That they had good experiences with me, because I mean, there's always one person out there that doesn't like you, but I hope that person's not at my funeral. So yeah, I'd really hope that, you know, I would leave a good enough impression on people that they'd have enough kind words to say about me.
Yeah, I think so. Well, man, it's been awesome getting to know you on
Yeah.
this. This is what's so cool is, you know, we see each other in locker rooms, we see each other at
Yeah.
shows. We never get an opportunity to talk like this, and so it's kind of cool to get to know you. It's been a pleasure sharing locker rooms with you, being on shows with you, and
Likewise.
I hope that match happens. I hope we can do that David and Goliath match.
Me
So
too. Me too.
yeah.
It'd be a fun one.
Yeah, so for those who are listening, subscribe if you haven't already. We got more exciting stuff coming up. Lo, it's been a pleasure. We'll
Yes,
talk to everybody
sir.
soon.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Am I able to leave my
Oh,
Instagram tag if
yeah,
possible?
yeah. Of course, yes. I don't know what to tell people where you can find you.
If you do want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Lo Devereaux Pro, which is LoDevereauxPro. Lo Devereaux Pro. Please do not get me mixed up with Lo Devereaux Dawson, because recently a promotion had put my Instagram handle of someone who's a model that shares my same name, Lo Devereaux, which is something else I found out. So
Nice.
I'm not Lo Devereaux Dawson. I am Lo Devereaux Pro on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Well, no, and let me just real quick before we go, just kind of put you over and say, no joke. I mean, if you haven't gotten this, I think that you are one of the more entertaining guys, especially considering you've only been doing it for a year and a half. One of the more entertaining guys in the area. And so if you guys ever want to see fun wrestling, Lo Devereaux is one of the guys that you definitely want to check out. So follow him, come to his shows, and it's been a pleasure, man. We'll talk again soon.
Likewise, man. I will see you soon.